My boss was watching me through my bedroom window in the middle of the night. I thought working for a suspected crime boss meant keeping my head down and doing laundry. But then Cole Viscari texted me at 3 a.m. telling me to stop biting my lip. I knew exactly how I took my coffee, what country songs I hummed, and what time I called my mom. He wasn't just protecting me, he was entirely, dangerously obsessed. Today, you and I are going to unpack this dark story together. It is nearly 3 in the morning, and Grace Moore jolts awake, her chest heaving in the dark. Her mind is completely anchored to one terrifying task. She must leave a heavy envelope in the private quarters of Cole Viscari. In just 2 weeks, Grace has absorbed the brutal laws of this syndicate. You ignore the men with guns. You ignore the violent arguments bleeding through the plaster. She throws off her blankets, still wearing a delicate white and red nightgown that glows like a warning sign. Look closely here, because the truth of human nature is harsh. When raw panic pilots your life, you hand over pieces of your soul long before you ever realize they are missing. The massive estate breathes around her like a sleeping beast, isolating Grace entirely. She creeps through the hallways, far too paralyzed by fear to look up at the heavy oil paintings glaring down from the walls. Her bare toes press against the freezing marble, every silent step amplifying just how utterly defenseless she is. She drifts into his exclusive territory, whispering to herself that this is an absolute emergency. It is a necessary fiction she clings to just to keep moving. She finds the heavy oak door unlocked. Her naive mind calls it luck. But men like Cole Viscari never leave a perimeter unsecured by accident. It is a carefully baited trap. We so frequently mistake quiet, empty spaces for safe harbors, right up until the chilling moment we hear the lock click shut behind us. Grace places the envelope on his nightstand, feeling a massive wave of relief. But then comes the sound that shatters her temporary illusion. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echo in the corridor. Her blood runs cold. She silently begs the universe to let him walk past, but the door swings wide open instead. Cole Viscari fills the frame, acting as an impenetrable wall between her and freedom. He wears an immaculate suit, sleeves pushed up to reveal dark ink on his forearms. He does not shout. He simply lets his heavy gaze drag down her trembling frame, taking in the white lace and the shivering red fabric. He commands the room without uttering a single word. It teaches us a brutal lesson about authority in this world. True power never actually needs to raise its voice to make you tremble. He speaks her name, letting his voice drop into a dark, intimate rumble that sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Grace violently flinches. Her throat seizes as she stammers, tripping over panicked words and offering desperate apologies she does not even owe. Cole merely shifts his weight, crossing his arms to become an immovable concrete wall. He coldly lists the facts. 3 in the morning, standing in his bedroom, wearing pajamas. He weaponizes her own shame against her, watching the red flush of panic rise up her neck. She practically begs for permission to leave. Instead, he takes one slow, deliberate step inside. We all learn this painful truth eventually. An apology only carries weight when you offer it to someone who actually cares about your suffering. The soft click of the heavy door shutting echoes like a judge slamming down. A gavel Grace feels her heart hammering against her ribs. She tries to build a flimsy wall between them by calling him Mr. Viscari. He obliterates that boundary instantly, commanding her to use his first name. This forced intimacy is the exact playbook monsters use to disarm victims. He closes the distance until he is mere inches away, his expensive cologne wrapping around her like a cloud. He accuses her of breaking in. When she weakly points out the open door, he delivers the killing blow, whispering that he left it unlocked specifically for her. If you want to understand the tragic art of manipulation, watch how patiently the spider invites the fly to weave its own deadly web. Notice his sinister design. Cole openly admits he engineered this midnight encounter. He knew she would panic, knew she would run upstairs, and knew exactly what she would be wearing. This man maneuvers human beings like disposable chess pieces. He leans in close and tells her he notices everything. The nervous way she bites her lip, her quiet humming, the cream in her coffee. It masquerades as affection, but it is a prison sentence. Grace backs away until her spine hits the cold wall. He plants a hand beside her head, gently catching her chin to force her terrified gaze to meet his. We often ignore this tragic reality. Memorizing someone's tiny habits is not always romance. Frequently, it is just a predator gathering emotional ammunition. Cole issues a dark warning, his voice rough with fabricated restraint. He tells her that if she ever sneaks into his room again, he will not be responsible for the consequences. It is a terrifying performance. Grace stops breathing entirely, frozen in place, stammering nonsense about the paperwork. His thumb begins to slowly stroke the soft skin of her jawline. He thrives on this twisted game, playing the part of a dangerous man fighting the urge to ruin her. She nods frantically, trying to cling to any professional boundary. But watch what happens next. She does not run away. She actually whispers, asking what he might do to her. The trap snaps shut. This is the fatal flaw in the human heart. Pure, morbid curiosity has lured more gentle souls into the darkness than blinding fear ever could. He leans in and whispers something vile about keeping her pinned exactly where she is. The tension in the room turns suffocating. Then his phone violently buzzes. In a fraction of a second, the spell breaks. Cole seamlessly shifts from a seductive monster into an icy Mafia boss. He barks an order into the receiver, the temperature dropping 10 degrees. This emotional whiplash is exactly how these men keep victims. Off balance, without sparing her a glance, he orders Grace to leave before he changes his mind. Adrenaline floods her veins, and she practically throws herself toward the hallway. But a man like Cole never lets his prey leave on their own terms. He barks her name, stopping her cold. True control is not just tying someone down. It is deciding the exact second they are allowed to run. He tells her to use the intercom next time, or wear heavy armor. It is a stunning piece of psychological warfare. He frames his violent intentions as an undeniable force of nature she simply has to survive. Then he dismisses her. Grace sprints down the corridors, turning the heavy brass lock on her door. But physical barriers mean nothing when your mind has already been breached. She lies awake, her skin actually burning where his rough fingers held her face. She replays the scene, twisting his violent threat into a romantic promise. She should be packing her bags and fleeing into the night. But the human heart is profoundly fragile. The deepest tragedy is how easily a broken soul confuses the adrenaline of surviving a predator with the beautiful spark of true desire. By the time the sun rises, the roots of a trauma bond have already taken hold. At 6 a.m, her phone lights up. It is a polite text from Cole, thanking her for the file. You and I know exactly what this manipulation looks like. He broke her spirit in the dark and now offers a gentle stroke of validation. Grace types out another apology, hopelessly submissive. His response is perfectly timed poison. He tells her to be careful, promising that next time he will not play the gentleman. Grace reads the words, her hands physically shaking. The terror of the night has vanished, swallowed whole by her desperate craving for his attention. Monsters do not pick their targets by accident. They scour the earth looking specifically for people who are already drowning. We must rewind the clock 3 weeks to understand how she ended up in this nightmare. Picture Grace in a faded Illinois town, staring at an ad for a housekeeper in Chicago. The salary is absurd, offering triple her current pay with zero experience required. Her best friend begs her to ignore it, warning her it screams of a trap. But Grace is suffocating under the crushing weight of her sick mother's medical debts. This agonizing financial desperation is the exact frequency predators tune into. Grace lies to herself, claiming she is just making a phone call to test the waters. It is the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves when standing on the edge of a cliff. We convince ourselves we can peer swiftly into the abyss, never realizing the darkness is already reaching up to pull us under. The trap is set with terrifying speed. Grace speaks with Bianca, whose maternal voice is designed to melt away any doubts. But the questions are cold. Can she follow strict orders blindly, without asking why? They are not hiring a worker. They are screening for total obedience. When Grace asks why there is no in-person meeting, Bianca expertly flips the script. She gently asks if Grace is actually strong enough for the job. Grace instantly pictures the eviction notices and the medical bills, ruining her life. She practically begs them to put the collar around her neck. Bianca smiles through the phone and tells her to pack for a long stay. Remember this harsh truth. Extreme desperation will always blind you to the iron bars of a cage, right up until the second the lock finally clicks shut. Watch the screen as the camera pulls back, framing a quiet severance. Grace's mother stands in the doorway, tears catching the harsh porch light. She senses the abyss, but Grace turns away, clinging to the fragile illusion of financial salvation. The door of the black sedan with a heavy thud, severing her from warmth. Outside, the neon city bleeds into an oppressive night, until the Viscari estate looms out of the fog, freezing stone and shadows heavy with buried sins. The place swallows her whole. The cruel lesson we often learn too late is that awe is usually just terror dressed up in absolute beauty. She steps onto the pristine marble, blind to the fact that those iron gates have just locked her inside an inescapable, gilded cage. Through the glass, the driver offers a ghost of a smile. At the main entrance, Bianca is waiting. Her eyes might seem maternal, but do not let the framing fool you. In this tragedy, women like Bianca act as silent wardens, cataloging every trembling breath. She leads Grace into cavernous halls, where the architecture itself becomes a psychological weapon. High vaulted ceilings and cold marble press down on the girl, proving how disposable she is. When Grace asks who else lives here, Bianca gives a hollow smile. Just security, she murmurs, and a very complicated family. The truth we must remember is that absolute control never starts with iron chains. It begins quietly, by making sure the captive never learns the true shape of the house they are trapped inside. You and I are going to watch this tragedy unfold together. Let us study the exact frame where Grace seals her doom. Bianca lays out the terms in the dim kitchen, wrapping the poison of captivity in the disguise of domestic chores. Just simple meals. And 3 ironclad laws: never open his office, never enter his bedroom, and never ask about his business. Instantly, Grace tenses up. Her biology is screaming, begging her to flee. The lesson here is written in blood. When your deepest instincts sound the alarm, you must listen to them. But the camera lingers on her pale face as she swallows the panic and simply nods. In that quiet moment, she signs an invisible contract, By sunset, she will meet Cole Vescari, completely blind to the suffocating dark roots all already wrapping tightly around her ankles. Enter the devil, draped in bespoke Italian wool. Cole Vescari steps into the frame, his presence designed to steal the oxygen from the room. His elegance masks a deep psychological rot. Notice how his flat eyes scan her, like a wolf appraising a wounded lamb. He does not ask her name, he dictates it. He glides to the espresso machine, deliberately invading her physical space, forcing her to breathe in his sharp cologne. In a velvet voice, he pries, extracting the tragic notes of her life, the sick mother, the crushing debts. Grace cuts her words short, cheeks burning, thinking she has bored him. But the vital lesson of the underworld is that a true predator is never bored. Behind that unblinking gaze, he is silently cataloguing every single crack in her fragile armor. Grace's voice trembles as she hides behind the excuse of needing a steady paycheck. Cole does not blink. He sharply orders her to drop the polite titles. The camera focuses on his rigid jaw as he tears down the boundaries of professionalism, leaving her exposed. He whispers that the staff are not her friends, planting cold seeds of paranoia. "Keep your distance. Stay safe," he murmurs, yet his body closes the gap until she can feel the heat from his chest. The contradiction is suffocating. When she dares to ask what she needs saving from, his mouth twitches into a cruel smile. The ultimate lesson here is that isolation is a monster's sharpest blade. By cutting her off from others, he crowns himself the only god in her dark new universe. The shadows of the estate pull tight around Grace's frayed nerves. The house breathes like a living beast, tires crunching at 3 a.m, harsh whispers echoing in the halls. Yet, Cole plays a twisted game of domestic bliss, a dirty mug left on the counter, the heavy thud of his fists hitting a punching bag. He paints himself as painfully human, creating a dizzying psychological dissonance. When he casually mocks her coffee, Grace's spine stiffens. She snaps back, telling him to make it himself, though her trembling hands betray her fear. Watch his reaction closely. He does not strike her. He simply smirks. The lesson here is that a tyrant's mercy is the ultimate trap. Blending sudden kindness with absolute control breaks a soul far faster than pure violence ever could. Cole leans into her defiance, dropping a quiet warning before violently shifting the emotional current. He murmurs for her not to apologize, claiming her fire is refreshing. This emotional whiplash is a masterclass in shattering someone's balance. From then on, the camera catches him always watching. He tracks her through the corridors, letting his heavy gaze burn into her back. Tragically, her nervous system misreads the danger. Instead of demanding an exit, her breath hitches, her skin flushes under his predatory stare. The vital lesson of human frailty is that prolonged fear will often disguise itself as twisted attraction just to survive the mental load. By her second week, when she bumps into a guard named Nate in the laundry room, the psychological venom has taken firm hold. Her grasp on reality is fractured. Watch this next scene closely. The guard, Nate, is the spark that lights her tragic fire. Amidst the dull hum of washing machines, the mundane bleeds into the macabre. Nate leans against the doorframe, wrapping his interrogation in the harmless guise of friendly gossip. He asks if she feels the strangeness of the house. When Grace whispers she cannot ask questions, Nate bridges the gap. He murmurs the bloody truth about the Vescari crime syndicate. Grace's stomach plummets. We see the exact second her nervous system crashes, all color draining from her face. The Kingpin's true nature is finally spoken aloud. The lesson here is as cold as stone. Willful ignorance is a remarkably flimsy shield. it can never protect the human soul from the creeping, unavoidable horror of the absolute truth. Nate offers a poisonous pacifier, promising that the devil protects his own, but the dark seed is planted. Later, bathed in the cold blue glow of her laptop, Grace dives into the abyss. The camera pans across damning headlines of racketeering and organized slaughter. There is Cole, frozen in a courthouse photograph, his face a mask of psychopathic calm. Any sane person would pack up and flee into the night, but Grace sits entirely frozen. We watch the tragic gears of rationalization turn. She places her own life on a scale against her mother's crushing medical debts. The heartbreaking lesson is that severe economic trauma forces the mind to normalize the blade at its throat. Desperation makes a person trade their survival for the fleeting relief of a blood-stained paycheck. With the snap of her laptop closing, Grace seals her fate. She drafts a pathetic mental treaty. She will take his money, but keep her heart turned to stone. It is a tragic underestimation of how a trauma bond works. By the third week, her exhausting vigilance begins to slip. The camera frames her in the kitchen, softly humming a lullaby from her childhood. It is a fatal moment of vulnerability. Moving like a shadow, Cole materializes behind her, his shoes making absolutely no sound on the marble. He sarcastically mocks her singing, a sharp reminder that he is always watching. Grace violently jumps, hands trembling as she stammers a desperate apology. The fundamental lesson we must carry is clear. Trying to outsmart a master manipulator by building invisible mental walls is nothing but a comforting, deadly delusion. Seeing her terror, Cole shifts the mood. The predator instantly becomes the gentle poet. His voice drops into a hypnotic cadence as he reads her soul aloud. He praises her humble roots, her sweet manners, and her untainted light. He paints her as a pure angel, standing in stark contrast to the ruthless thugs in his empire. This is the tragic art of narcissistic mirroring. He makes her feel utterly unique. Then, mid-sentence, he simply stops. He leaves his coffee on the marble and walks away. It is a flawlessly orchestrated retreat, designed to leave her drowning in unresolved tension. Grace stands there, cheeks burning, her final psychological defenses crumbling into dust. The cruel lesson is timeless. When a predator whispers about how beautifully different you are, he is just sizing you up for a custom-built cage. Now we watch our heroine spiral into a frantic dance of avoidance. Grace builds a fragile routine, brewing his bitter espresso at dawn and vanishing before he descends the stairs. She is desperately running from the memory of his touch, the phantom heat of his fingers lingering against her jaw. The psychological tear inside her is devastating. She is terrified of his darkness, yet morbidly addicted to the tension. Bianca, watching from the wings like a seasoned Greek liquorist, sees right through this charade. Cornering Grace in the kitchen, Bianca verbally slices through the girl's weak excuses. The life lesson here is brutal but necessary. Running from a trigger only grants it absolute dominion over your subconscious mind. Eventually, you must stop running, turn around, and look the beautiful trap directly in the eye. Bianca mercilessly dismantles Grace's flimsy excuse about maintaining professional distance. Shaking and desperate for a lifeline, Grace whispers about her late-night encounter with the kingpin. She describes a man weaving terrible warnings and dark promises into a single breath, the hallmark of a megalomaniac. They disguise their lethal threats as romantic seduction. Bianca leans against the cold marble counter, acting as the ultimate tragic enabler. She clinically diagnoses Cole as highly dangerous, intensely possessive, and completely broken inside. The lighting grows heavier as she speaks. The harrowing life lesson to take away is that enablers will always accurately describe the teeth and claws of the monster, yet they will still gently encourage you to pet it. Bianca continues weaving this twisted fairy tale, framing Cole's violent obsession as an absolute romantic attachment. It is a terrifying synonym for psychological suffocation. Grace tries to build one last wall, citing the massive wealth gap, whispering that she is nothing but a maid. Bianca shatters this final illusion, confirming his dark eyes are focused entirely on her. Right on cue, Cole steps into the kitchen. He is out of his sharp suits, wearing damp athletic gear, his chest heaving, radiating raw, undeniable biological power. The camera slows down, capturing the sweat on his brow. The most dangerous life lesson is found right here. Seeing your captor as ordinary, breathing flesh and blood, completely dissolves your last line of defense, leaving your heart perfectly exposed. Let us take a closer look at this moment together. Watch the shift in the room when Cole locks his unblinking gaze on Grace. She shrinks back, clutching at formal titles like a paper shield. Cole tears that defense down without a sound, blurring the lines of command. Left alone, the silence wraps around Grace like an iron vice. Her hands shake as she scrubs the kitchen counters, desperate to wipe away her mounting terror. But Cole steps right into her space, refusing to let her hide. The tension snaps. She spills her scattered truth, her fear, her twisted longing, the phantom weight of his hands. We all learn a hard lesson here. Handing your deepest vulnerabilities to a man who thrives on absolute control never buys his mercy. It just hands him the heavy keys to your cage. Notice how the camera tilts upward, making Cole appear like a towering shadow. Grace weakly tries to dress up her panic as simple professionalism, but Cole just answers with a low, rumbling laugh that vibrates with complete mastery. He strips away her fragile lie, his large frame slowly boxing her in against the cold cabinets. The claustrophobia feels physically suffocating. He speaks with a terrifying calm about their inevitable collision. Her spine hits the sharp marble edge. There is nowhere left to run. Slowly, his hand rises, floating mere inches from her trembling cheek without ever making contact. Here is a haunting lesson about human nature. The breathless, terrified waiting for a strike, can break a person's spirit far faster than the physical blow itself. Stick with me here. This is where the tragic foundation of their bond takes shape. Cole moves closer, using the sheer gravity of his body to pull the oxygen from the room. Grace throws up her desperate walls, whispering that they belong to completely different worlds. But her ragged breathing betrays the logical words falling from her own lips. The camera catches the quiet smile of a hunter who knows his prey has stopped running. Suddenly, the door flies open and breaks the spell. One of his men bursts in with a street crisis. We watch the dark shadows retreat from Cole's face as he instantly slips his cold public mask back on. The life lesson here is rather grim. A logical mind can almost never win a war against the raw, pulling gravity of dark desire. The frame widens to capture the terrifying speed of his transformation. 1 second, he burns with obsession. The next, the ice-cold armor of a ruthless boss snaps into place. He listens to a rival threat without a single flinch, scheduling a brutal confrontation as easily as ordering a cup of coffee. Before leaving, he turns slowly, his dark eyes pinning Grace to the floor. He tells her to stop running. It sounds gentle, but echoes with the heavy acidity of a final command. The door clicks shut. The camera lingers on her heaving chest as the kitchen becomes a locked tomb. It is a very harsh life truth to swallow. When you decide to dance on the edge of a sharp blade, you rarely notice you are bleeding until it is far too late to walk away. The afternoon sun casts jagged shadows. Grace scrubs the floors in a numb rhythm until brutal sounds of a struggle bleed through the heavy walls. Every instinct screams at her to run, but the tragic pull of her fascination drags her right to through the oak door. She hears a rival making demands, followed by Cole's voice. His tone drops to an unnatural, dead calm. It is the chilling quiet right before a slaughter. Then comes the sickening thud of bone, followed by silence. Her trembling hand turns the cold brass handle, sealing her fate. Cole sits behind his desk, his face an emotionless mask, while a broken man bleeds on the rug. The lesson here is brutal. Unchecked, curiosity around violent men always leads you straight to the bloody scene of the crime. Cole's dark eyes flick to the door without an ounce of shock. He calmly orders her to leave, shifting his broad shoulders to block her view of the blood. This is not an act of kindness. It is a predator guarding his fragile possession. When Grace freezes, Cole's voice cracks like a heavy whip, demanding obedience. In that tense second, the bleeding man makes his final mistake. He spits a nasty insult, breaks a cheap new toy. The shift is violently instantaneous. Cole moves with terrifying speed. In a single heartbeat, his hand crushes the man's throat, lifting his boots entirely off the floor. The grim life lesson echoes loudly here. Arrogant words spoken in a moment of bitter pride are often the exact iron nails that seal your own coffin. The dying man thrashes, fingers tearing uselessly at Cole's grip as his face turns violet. A guard steps in, reminding the boss that a corpse serves no purpose here. Cole holds the choke for one unbearable second, letting the man taste death before dropping him. He delivers an icy warning as the gasping body is dragged away. A suffocating silence fills the room. Cole turns his unreadable eyes back to Grace. Any normal person would be running in absolute terror. But the tragic rot has already taken hold. She stares up at the violent man who just nearly ended a life, and whispers that he makes her feel completely safe. The lesson is truly terrifying. A mind that is starved for deep protection will eventually fall in love with the exact same sword that threatens to destroy it. Like a switch flipping, Cole buries the monster away. His voice softens into a hypnotic hum as he steps closer, swearing she has nothing to fear from his hands. He spins a twisted lie, painting his brutal violence as a simple duty to keep his world safe. To him, Grace is already his property. He looks into her wide eyes, and the camera captures his tragic realization. Her innocence is a clear mirror, showing him the rotting blackness of his own soul. His rough hand reaches out, barely grazing her cheek. In a fractured confession, he admits her goodness makes him want to be a better man. The tragedy is laid bare, offering a very bitter life lesson. Whenever pure white snow tries to cover up the deep, dark mud, it is always the snow that ends up ruined and permanently stained. Follow me closely here. We are about to see exactly how deep this tragic sickness goes. Grace stands frozen, her mind at absolute war. Cole shows a fleeting ghost of humanity, admitting he is ruined, urging her to find a gentle man who does not carry the scent of blood. But the emotional damage is done. Later that night, the camera finds Grace tossing in the dark. Her mind replays the horror on a loop, his hand crushing a throat, followed by his broad back shielding her from harm. She weeps at her own twisted desires. She knows she should run away, but all she hungers for is the heavy weight of his dark protection. Suddenly, her phone lights up the silent room. The lesson is perfectly clear. The absolute hardest chains to break in life are always the ones we willingly lock around our own hearts. You and I are going to look at this together and decide just how trapped she is. The glowing text reveals a horrifying escalation. Cole casually types they can see that he is pacing through his windows across the dark courtyard. Grace's fingers shake as she replies, calling out his predatory stalking. But Cole does not apologize. He simply twists his madness into a dark promise of safety. To prove there is nowhere to hide, he sends a chilling list. He names exactly what music she plays, her phone calls, and every anxious habit she thought was completely private. He ends the message by telling her to stop biting her trembling lower lip right in that exact second. It is a terrifying lesson in power. When a dark wolf learns the exact rhythm of your breathing, you no longer own your own life. Let you and I examine this quiet surrender. Grace freezes, her fingers pressed against the icy glass. The camera drifts backward, revealing his shadow claiming total control over her sanctuary. She tries to build a fragile wall on her phone, typing that his actions cross every professional line. His texted response casts a harsh light on her pale face. Not inappropriate, he insists, just intense. Then comes his final chilling order: lock the door. It is a quiet warning that his violent urges are straining against their leash. The brass lock turns with a sickening click. Yet, she leaves the bedside lamp glowing brightly, staying perfectly visible to the watcher. The simple life lesson here is terrifying. When a frightened soul realizes they cannot outrun the monster, they often choose to invite him inside. The wardrobe of a tragedy always tells a story. Bianca smooths a restrictive black gown across the bed, a sharp departure from the baggy clothes Grace normally uses as armor. Grace shrinks back, arguing that a common worker has no business wearing expensive silk. The lens tightens on Bianca as she reveals the grim reality. Cole wants her highly visible tonight. Soon, the mansion will be crawling with ruthless men. By stripping away her safe invisibility and forcing her under the bright lights, the boss is openly branding her. He is using the dark elegance of that dress as a warning sign to every predator in the room. He is claiming his territory. The harsh life lesson we must swallow is this: exceptional beauty is almost never a gift. Most of the time, it is simply a bright target painted directly onto your back. Grace stares at the dark silk, unable to grasp the twisted logic. How could a dress exposing so much skin possibly keep her safe? Bianca offers no comfort. In a syndicate built on violence, a highly visible prize is an owned prize. At 7:45, the camera lingers as Grace studies her reflection. A stranger stares back. The nervous girl is gone, replaced by a sharp woman draped in shadow. The mirror delivers an unsettling life lesson. We usually only recognize our own innocence in the exact moment we begin to lose it. The quiet shatters when Nate leans against the doorframe. He lets out a low whistle, predicting that Cole will completely lose his mind tonight. Grace stammers out a frantic denial. Nate just extends his arm, pulling her toward the brutal spotlight before she can turn and run. The ground floor has become a suffocating theater of dirty money. The air is heavy, scored by the mournful crying of string instruments. As she hits the bottom stair, Grace feels the crushing weight of her insignificance. Nate leans in, his voice cutting through the elegant music to deliver his rules. Serve the liquor. Keep your eyes dead. Do not speak. And absolutely stay out of the gambling parlor, the beating heart of this empire. He drops her arm and vanishes into a sea of sharp suits and icy stares. Grace is left adrift, floating past elite guests who look right through her. We learn a profound life lesson in rooms just like this. True loneliness is never about simply being by yourself. True loneliness is feeling entirely invisible while standing shoulder to shoulder with 100 breathing predators. A wealthy guest suddenly blocks her path, dripping venom as she accuses Grace of serving a dirty glass. Grace lowers her chin, swallowing her pride to apologize and kill the conflict. She retreats to the stark safety of the kitchen, but instantly the air grows freezing cold. Every hair on her arm stands up. The apex predator is here. Cole stops dead at the threshold. The camera lingers as his dark eyes drag slowly up her body, shattering any illusion of a normal employer. He tries to praise her work, but the raw hunger in his stare betrays pure possession. When Grace nervously asks what he needs, his voice turns to stone. He orders her to stay hidden in this exact room. The life lesson we take from this is brutally clear. Yielding to a dangerous monster never buys your freedom. It only encourages him to draw the bars of your cage tighter. Stick with me, because this is where the dynamic shifts. Cole steps closer, harsh shadows cutting across his jaw. He warns her that the men outside are sick. They are drawn to pure things just to crush them. Grace lifts her chin, throwing up a flimsy shield of defiance to insist she can protect herself. Cole does not blink. He dismantles her logic entirely, raising his hand to let his fingers hover a millimeter from her trembling cheek. His voice drops into a soft, agonizing whisper. He calls her undeniably beautiful, obliterating the final boundary between them. The life lesson here is one we often learn too late. A predator's temporary gentleness is always their most lethal weapon. The next hour blurs into a dizzying montage of spilled champagne, leaving Grace stranded in the frantic roar of her own pulse. Let us step into the middle of this tragic scene together, you and I. Watch closely as Grace carries her tray through the dim parlor. Without warning, a heavy, drunken hand aggressively grabs her waist. Notice her reaction. Her spine goes rigid, a flash of hot anger burning away her fear. But before she can defend herself, Cole materializes out of the cigar smoke. The camera focuses on the terrifying stillness in his eyes. He is not stepping in to save her. Someone has just touched his prized possession, and that disrespect demands blood. He leans in, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper that instantly freezes the drunken guest's veins. We learn a haunting life lesson from watching this quiet terror. The most dangerous monsters in any room never actually need to raise their voices to prove that they own it. The drunk tries to laugh off the tension, slurring that he was only admiring how lovely she looks. Cole moves with lethal grace, stepping smoothly between them to entirely block the man's view. It is a flawless territorial claim. He casually rests his heavy hand on the man's shoulder. To the wealthy onlookers, it looks like a polite gesture, but the camera pushes in tight, revealing Cole's knuckles, turning stark white as his thumb digs brutally into a nerve cluster. The guest's smile instantly twists into a sick grimace of breathless agony. Cole simply nods to Nate, who quietly drags the whimpering man toward the exit. It is a masterpiece of hidden cruelty. The life lesson we take from this shadow play is chilling. The most catastrophic pain is often delivered by a predator wearing a tailored suit and a warm smile. The second the threat is dragged away, Cole spins back to face Grace. His jaw is locked tight, straining to cage the raw violence thrashing beneath his skin. He reaches out, his hands vibrating with unspent adrenaline as he gently cups her face. He demands to know if she is hurt. When Grace nervously tries to brush the encounter off, he cuts her down. His voice turns to iron as he points to her violently trembling fingers. He leans in, swearing that he will personally shatter the bones of any man who ever touches her. When she gasps at the sheer brutality of his promise, he casually shrugs it off as simple honesty. The life lesson here is one we must all learn before it is too late. The exact moment a monster convinces you that his terrifying violence is actually your personal armor, the psychological trap has completely snapped shut. The camera lingers on the tragic reverence burning in his eyes. He whispers that she is completely innocent. To him, she is the last clean thing left in his rotting world. It is the devastating projection of a damned soul desperate to hoard the light. He swears he would burn this entire mansion down before letting anyone drag her into the dirt. This dark spell is suddenly shattered by the violent slam of heavy oak doors. A rival syndicate has arrived. The protective lover vanishes, replaced instantly by the cold, ruthless general. He fires off suffocating orders. Stay close to the armed guards. Do not walk these halls alone. He vows to find her later. Let us remember a crucial life lesson as we watch Grace nod in quiet submission. Absolute isolation disguised as loving protection is always the first step in forging an unbreakable psychological chain. Grace stands in the shadows as her logical mind at war with her racing pulse. The terrifying seeds of trauma bonding have finally taken root. She moves through the parlor like a ghost, but her eyes constantly track Cole through the thick cigar smoke. Whenever his cold gaze cuts through the crowd to find her, her damaged heart flutters. She is tragically mistaking his suffocating surveillance for deep devotion. Later, hiding in the quiet safety of the pantry, she overhears two guards whispering the bloody truth. Cole did not just kick that drunken guest out. He dragged the man into an alley and systematically snapped the bones in his hand. This delivers a profound life lesson about human survival. When a fragile mind is trapped in a terrifying cage, it cannot escape. It will desperately choose to romanticize the monster who holds the key. Let you and I pause here and look closely at this devastating psychological shift. A healthy person would hear about shattered bones and immediately run for their life. But watch Grace. She does not feel the icy grip of terror. Instead, she feels a dark, intoxicating heat flushing her cheeks. This is the tragic birth of Stockholm Syndrome. She is wrapping her survival instincts around the lethal gravity of her captor. By 1 a.m, the elite guests are gone. The massive mansion is eerily silent. Grace is quietly wiping down the kitchen counters, seeking peace in a mundane task, when a towering shadow falls heavily across the floor. Cole has cornered her. The brutal life lesson here is undeniable. There is simply no physical safe space left to hide when the fragile mind has already surrendered the keys to the monster. Cole steps directly behind her. Moving so close, the heat of his chest burns through her dress. It is a deliberate cinematic invasion, designed to short-circuit her brain. His voice is a low, fractured rasp as he admits his iron control is gone. For a ruthless crime boss, this dark confession of obsession is a terrifying surrender. When his heavy hand strokes her neck, it is a violent compulsion. He whispers the ugly truth against her skin. Seeing that man touch her did not trigger an urge to protect. It triggered pure homicidal rage. This reveals the chilling core of a narcissist. The life here is absolute. To a true monster, you are never a real person to be loved. You are simply an extension of his own ego, and touching what is his guarantees total annihilation. The camera lingers on the heavy space between them as he drops the ultimate anchor. He tells her, without a flicker of hesitation, that she belongs to him. He does not ask for permission. In his eyes, morality is just dust settling in the dark. He challenges her to pull away, knowing he has shattered her defenses. Grace's shoulders drop. She surrenders, her voice trembling as she confesses the dark pull she felt since they collided. The tragic bond seals itself right then. She whispers her fears, Admitting she has no idea how to be what a man like him needs, he catches her gaze, his voice low and validating, praising her bravery. It is a profoundly haunting life truth we must face. When you mistake sheer terror for deep passion, you become the one who happily locks your very own chains. The shadows grow heavier right as the tension snaps. He asks for her permission to lean in, presenting a beautiful but empty illusion of choice. The moment they connect, adrenaline floods her system, drowning out every rational warning bell. Pulling back, he casually rewrites the rules of her existence. She is no longer just an employee. She belongs to him now, and he swears anyone who crosses her will face his total fury. When she points out how intense this is, he offers a chillingly calm slice of honesty, admitting his grip is toxic. He uses his own brokenness to build a twisted foundation of trust. It brings us to a painful truth about life. We are far too quick to forgive a dangerous person's darkest flaws the second they package them as a vulnerable confession. The light catches his slow movement as he pulls her close again. This embrace is deep, sinking the emotional hook right into her mind. He murmurs that he will never let her go, crushing any thought of escape before it can bloom. Then comes the devastating plea. He admits he is a ruined man, but promises to be better just for her. With one sentence, the heavy weight of his salvations falls onto her trembling shoulders. He leads her down the hallway, his fingers wrapped tight around hers, and her instinct to run simply fades away. She accepts her place in his brutal world. It reveals a tragic quirk of human nature and a hard lesson to swallow. Sometimes, we convince ourselves the only way to survive the dark is to fall desperately in love with the monster hiding inside it. Let us step back together for a moment, you and I, and look at the tragedy unfolding here. How do you measure the slow destruction of free will? Every element of psychological capture is present. We see the isolation, the quiet crossing of boundaries, and the sudden rush of manufactured devotion. Watch closely as the camera tightens and her world shrinks. 3 days later, the morning light reveals his enforcer standing like a stone statue outside her door. His casual warmth is gone, replaced by a rigid, cold tension. The fragile glass of her false safety has shattered, revealing the stark reality of her containment. It leaves behind a cold lesson we must never ignore. The most effective prisons in this world are almost always built without a single iron bar. The pale sun barely touches the floor, yet her freedom is completely gone. The enforcer delivers the cold reality. She needs a constant shadow now, because unseen eyes have found their hidden world. She is summoned downstairs, and the camera pans to the syndicate leader, his muscles wired tight with explosive rage. He purposely ignores her at first, letting the suffocating silence amplify her dread. When his dark eyes finally snap to meet hers, the sheer aggression in the room makes her physically step backward. A brutal rival group has officially put a target on her back. We learn a difficult truth about desire in these tense moments. Being chosen by a highly dangerous man always means you inherit his deadliest enemies. The scene is painted in harsh light as he lays out the brutal truth. His enemies know she is his weak point, making her a prime target. He invades her space, crouching down to trap her in an inescapable stare. He wants her to feel the lethal edge of his criminal life. When he drops his voice to a whisper, claiming her pain would destroy him, it plays as a perfect piece of emotional manipulation. Her desperate mind grabs at one last rational thought. She asks to leave. He cuts her off with a single absolute word. No, it rings out in the quiet room like a heavy steel vault locking into place. It offers a terrifying window into the human ego. For a man who demands total control, letting go of a prized possession is a personal tragedy far worse than death itself. He expertly paints her gilded cage as a protective shield, swearing he will not lose her. In a beautifully tragic moment, her hand trembles as she reaches out to trace his jaw. The deep roots of Stockholm Syndrome have taken hold. She is actively soothing the very architect of her ruin. His eyes darken as he lays out his terrifying endgame. He intends to keep her forever. Admitting that standing beside him is basically a death sentence, the new rules fall like heavy iron chains. No walking outside alone. No speaking to strangers. Keep away from the glass windows once the sun sets. It is a chilling reminder of how our minds bend under extreme pressure. What a healthy person sees as suffocating madness, an obsessed mind will always justify as an act of profound devotion. Look closely at this frame, with me, when she leans in to quiet his anxious pacing with a kiss. It is not romantic. It is pure survival instinct. She is desperately trying to manage the dangerous storms of his mood, he answers, by pulling her in, coldly declaring that she is his. It is a perfect cinematic picture of a broken ego mistaking ownership for love. Soon, the shadows stretch and the walls press inward. The enforcer watches her fold clothes and pick out fruit, turning normal domestic life into an eerie stage play. She whispers her frustrations, but the guard only defends the warden. It brings us to a devastating reality we often ignore in life. We are far too quick to mistake the tightening bars of a gilded cage for the solid, safe arms of a true protector. The camera captures how the enforcer carefully feeds her illusions. He murmurs that she is the only one who has ever thawed the heart of this violent man. It is a deadly poetic poison, convincing her that surrendering her freedom is a rare form of power. Later, the dark bedroom frames her sleepless eyes. Her body is physically rejecting the trauma. When her phone cuts through the blackness, it is not a lover checking in. It is the warden watching the security cameras. He orders her to his space, ignoring the boundaries she tries to build. She finds him staring at the city, hunting for invisible ghosts. It reveals a sorrowful truth about human connection. When your life is built on relentless paranoia, intimacy is just another dangerous flank you must constantly defend. The dialogue plays out like a beautifully scored cinematic tragedy. He whispers about his lack of sleep, twisting it into the agonizing burden of guarding a treasure he is terrified to lose. He promises her a life painted in constant danger, explicitly stating he is placing her inside a permanent cage. Yet, swallowed whole by the dark romance of her capture, she takes a quiet step toward him. She begs to be locked inside, confusing the collapse of her free will with a fiercely independent choice. She feels like a martyr for love, blind to the puppet strings moving her hands. We must never turn away from this heartbreaking reality. People do not intentionally walk into chains, but a starving heart will eventually learn to find immense comfort in the heavy weight of its own shackles. The camera holds steady as he delivers a masterclass in weaponized vulnerability. He spills his own poison, warning her that he is a dangerous man. It is a staged confession, designed to pull the next moment right out of her throat. She begs him not to let her go. She adopts the chilling language of a prized possession, pleading to be kept. She pours her self-worth into the hands of a violent man, mistaking his possessive grip for a protective shield. He signs their dark contract with a desperate kiss, then quietly orders her into his bed. It is a terrifying dance of absolute psychological control. Here is the quiet tragedy we must all face. When a soul goes unseen for too long, it will gladly hand over the keys to its own ruin, just to feel noticed by someone in the dark. Let us step inside a beautifully designed trap. She crosses the threshold into his labyrinth, disguised as a simple place to sleep. The lens lingers on the room's quiet luxury, where soft sheets wrap around her like a woven web. He slides into the dark beside her, pulling her close to cement his dominance. He whispers a promise of restraint, which she tragically mistakes for chivalry. The truth is much darker. He finds a twisted high in mastering his own urges, just as he masters her. They lie perfectly still, his breathing slowing now that his prize is securely locked in his arms. We have to walk away with this chilling reality. Just because the wolf decides not to bare its teeth tonight does not mean you have magically tamed the beast sleeping in your bed. The camera pushes through the heavy, suffocating shadows of the bedroom. Grace speaks with a voice trembling just above a whisper, offering her secrets in a desperate bid to find a human heart inside her captor. But watch the cold stillness in Cole. He speaks only of his terror that someone might steal what belongs to him. His words are clinically precise, locking psychological chains around her wrists as she confesses her love. He forces her to swear to it, carving the promise into the dark. Before delivering a devastating truth, he claims that even her hatred would never break his absolute obsession. The tragedy here is painfully undeniable. We must remember that, while genuine affection breathes through mutual choice, a pathological obsession only ever needs a target to consume. The lighting shifts, framing them in the pale glow of their twisted reality. Cole takes the concept of love and sharpens it into a blade. He confesses his need for her is a sickness, wrapping his suffocating tyranny in the velvet cloak of devotion. Grace, lost to the tragic undertow of her trauma, reaches up to pull him into a desperate kiss. She ignores the ruin he promises, begging to drown in the storm that will destroy her. As his lips meet hers, the framing makes it look like mutual worship, but it is merely the quiet victory of the wolf closing its jaws around the lamb. This fatal embrace leaves us with a haunting truth. When a deeply fractured soul looks you in the eye and tells you they are a danger to your life, you must believe them the first time. Today, you and I are going to unpack this tragedy together, frame by heartbreaking frame. In looking closely at their bond, we see the masterful choreography of a predator masquerading as a savior. Cole speaks with agonizing softness, weaving his dominance into a script of poetic devotion. Grace closes her eyes, mistaking this total entrapment for a beautiful awakening. The camera tightens on her face as she confesses she fears his violent world, but never him. It is the tragic surrender of Stockholm Syndrome. Her entire universe has been violently reduced to the very man holding the match. It teaches us a brutal, necessary lesson about survival. The person who intentionally sets the fire around you can never truly be trusted to pull you safely from the burning house. Notice the exact way his hands grip her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. It is a calculated physical anchor designed to deepen his psychological chokehold. He whispers a vow to protect her from the violence he actively commands, thanking her for loving a monster. By painting himself as a broken man, he hooks his claws directly into her bleeding empathy. Cut to the pale morning light spilling across the bed. Grace opens her eyes to find him motionless, staring down at her breathing form. He dismisses it as a habit from a dangerous life, but his cold gaze screams of paranoid possession. Let this be a clear warning to us all. Someone who obsessively monitors your every moment is not acting as your guardian, but as the ruthless warden of your cell. The scene opens on a quiet, unsettling display of domestic care. Cole, dismisses his guards, and carries the breakfast tray to her himself. Every step is designed to soften the brutal edges of the kingpin, replacing him with the illusion of a devoted lover. Grace sinks deeper into the heavy sheets, entirely swallowed by his dark world. She tragically mistakes this terrifying isolation for the peaceful warmth of home. As words of love spill from her lips, his jaw tightens. He commands her to say it again, demanding his name, echo against her total devotion. It is a desperate feeding of his monumental ego. This forces us to swallow a deeply uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, the intense affection we mistake for profound love is simply a predator, admiring his captured prize. The fragile glass of their quiet morning shatters the instant a heavy fist pounds against the oak door. An associate announces a package left exclusively for Grace. In a heartbeat, the tender lover vanishes. The camera captures the terrifying shift in Cole's posture as the ruthless kingpin takes full command. His voice drops into a deadly growl, ordering her to lock the door from the inside, instantly transforming their sanctuary into a barricaded holding cell. Grace fumbles with the deadbolt, dread flooding her veins. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? She is finally feeling the unbearable weight of loving a violent man. The life lesson here is written in stone. You can never invite a hungry wolf into your bed and expect the rest of the pack to stay away. The camera pushes in on the glossy surface of the photograph. It is a secret shot of Grace, defaced with a violent warning scrawled in red ink. This is a surgical dagger aimed right at Cole's massive pride. Watch how all the warmth drains from his face, leaving only cold stone. He barks an order for her to pack immediately. Stripping away her right to choose, she is no longer his lover. She is a vulnerable chess piece being moved across a deadly board. When she dares to protest, his flat stare crushes the argument into dust. It is a stunning visual of her complete captivity. It reminds us of a bitter reality we so often ignore. The ultimate price of seeking safety in the arms of a dangerous man is the permanent surrender of your personal freedom. Watch the horrifying pivot in Cole's eyes when his commands fail to make her move. Like a seasoned actor finding his spotlight, his rigid posture collapses. His voice cracks in the silent room. He begs her with trembling terror to please just let him keep her safe. It is a masterstroke of emotional warfare against a woman drowning in a trauma bond. Grace, shattered by his tears, refuses to leave his side, clinging to the illusion that they are equals in this tragedy. They settle on a 2-day separation, a deal he twists into looking like his own agonizing sacrifice. He holds all the strings, yet makes the puppet feel like she wrote the script. This reveals a crucial life lesson. True compromise is never born from calculated coercion dressed up as broken desperation. The desolate drive into the woods perfectly mirrors her suffocating descent into captivity. 2 silent enforcers escort her out of the living world and into a brutal fortress hidden among the pines. Grace forces a nervous smile, whispering that the house is beautiful in a tragic attempt to make this nightmare feel normal. But the massive steel doors and unblinking camera lenses tell the true story. Cole has simply locked his most precious asset inside an impenetrable vault. The heavy mahogany furniture and the chilled, silent air constantly remind her exactly whose property she is now standing on. It paints a chilling picture of human attachment that we must never lose sight of. A beautifully decorated cage is still nothing more than a prison, no matter how much you might love the warden. The camera shifts to the shadowy halls of Vittorio's estate, where Luca paces like a trapped ghost. You and I must look at this without the romantic lighting. This empty mansion should have sparked a desperate urge to run. Instead, Luca twists the iron bars into a comforting embrace, viewing the isolation as a loving shield. Day one is pure withdrawal. Her hands shake as she wanders under the watchful eyes of Vittorio's men. Then comes the ringing telephone at 2 in the morning. Vittorio's deep voice breaks the silence, delivering the exact toxic comfort her shattered mind is begging for. Her tearful confession of fear is the final bowing of her head. We must learn from her tragic fall. True safety empowers you to freely leave, while dark manipulation only ever locks the door. Listen closely to the terrifying brilliance of Vittorio's late-night call. He weaves a flawless illusion of suffering, crying out in agony at the thought of Luca being far away, ignoring the fact that his unarmed men stand outside her door. This sick reversal forces the trapped bird to sing a lullaby to the cat. His voice drops into a raspy whisper as he describes the blood he will spill for his prized possession. He unloads the entire weight of his violent world onto her shoulders, claiming his soul was lost the second he laid eyes on her. It is the poetic poison of the megalomaniac. Outside, the sky begins to bruise purple as a heavy storm rolls over the estate. It leaves us with a profound truth. Never let anyone convince you their destructive choices are your cross to carry. The storm crashes against the glass, tearing the sky apart in blinding white flashes. When the power dies, the estate is swallowed by darkness, mirroring the terror in Luca's mind. The harsh ring of an untraceable phone slices through the panic. The rival cartel knows exactly how to play this psychological game. A hollow voice whispers through the receiver, promising no amount of steel will stop the slaughter. It strikes against her fragile illusion of safety. 90 minutes later, Vittorio bursts through the doors, soaked in rain, stalking the black halls like a predator, defending its kill. It leaves us with an unforgettable lesson. Having a monster standing guard at your door does not guarantee your safety. It merely dictates the violent terms of your demise. Let's block out this scene together. The camera pushes in on Vittorio. His hands move over Luca in a blur, checking for injuries, but look closely at his eyes. This is not the gentle touch of a worried healer. This is a man frantically taking inventory of his most prized possession. He promises to whisk her away, painting a romantic picture of escape across the globe. But do not be fooled by the sweet lighting. He is simply moving her cage to a different room. Marco watches from the shadows, decoding the storm. That phone call was never about spilling blood. It was a scalpel slicing into Vittorio to expose his rawest nerve. It teaches us a harsh truth about life. Sometimes, our deepest attachments become the exact weapons our enemies use to completely break us. You and I need to stop and look closely at this exact frame. Watch the realization wash over Vittorio's rigid jawline. He gave his enemies exactly what they wanted. Pure panic. It was the ultimate proof that his iron armor had a fatal crack. As his arms tighten around Luca like a vice, Marco breaks down the rival strategy in the dim room. It was a bluff, designed to prove Luca's the center of his violent world. Vittorio whispers that she is not a weakness, but his everything is. It is a beautiful, tragic lie, he tells himself. Outside, the rain lashes against the glass. Inside, they are trapped in a suffocating bubble of fear. The lesson here is heavy. Refusing to admit our own vulnerabilities only makes them infinitely more dangerous to us. The lighting shifts, casting long bruised shadows across the floor. Vittorio pulls her close, his breathing ragged. He desperately needs the physical warmth of her skin to anchor his own shattering mind. He whispers that he almost lost her, an exaggeration meant to spike her adrenaline and pull her deeper into the nightmare. He offers her a fake choice, suggesting he could let her walk away, fully knowing the script is already written. She refuses to leave. She grabs his coat, mistaking his absolute control for profound, passionate romance. She willingly steps further into the dark. It is a heartbreaking reality of the human condition. When we are starved for connection, we will violently defend the people building our cages, mistaking their heavy chains for safety. Watch the subtle shift in body language here. Luca reaches up, her hands trembling as they cup the face of the man who dragged her into this hell. She whispers her devotion, cementing the tragic bond between them. Vittorio crushes his mouth against hers in a desperate, territorial kiss. He owns her, and he needs her to feel that ownership deep in her bones. He admits his love is a terrifying thing, twisting the narrative so she feels like the storm he cannot control. The rain beats heavily against the roof as she softly asks about his past. She is digging for the wounded boy, hiding beneath the monster. We all do this sometimes. We try so hard to find the broken pieces in someone who hurts us, hoping that if we can just understand their pain, it will somehow protect us from it. The camera rests on Vittorio's shadowed profile. His voice drops to a raspy whisper as he paints a picture of a brutal father and the ghost of a mother. It is a masterful psychological performance. He frames every drop of blood on his hands as a tragic necessity, a shield built by a scared child. Then comes the final, devastating blow. He tells Luca she is the only pure thing left in his rotting world, the only person who makes him crave a normal life. Luca breaks right on cue. She reaches out for him, validating his twisted reality. She trades her memories of a simple childhood for his dark fairy tale. It is a fatal human mistake. We often romanticize the monsters we cannot escape, convincing ourselves our love is the one magic thing strong enough to wash away their sins. The scene fades into the cold, grey light of dawn. Luca rests her head on his chest, convinced that this violent nightmare is better than a peaceful life without him. He calls himself a monster who caught an angel. It is a classic manipulation tactic, binding her gentle soul to his heavy darkness. He gives her a hollow warning about his true nature, leaving the door open just enough to claim she had a choice. But she presses her fingers to his lips and, refusing to hear the ugly truth, she chooses to go blind. It brings us to a painful realization about the human heart. We are so desperate not to be alone in the freezing cold that we will willingly walk right into the center of a raging fire. We let it consume us, tragically mistaking the blistering heat for comfort and warmth. Let us step back together and examine the timing here, because it is flawless. The storm outside finally breaks, and sunlight hits the room. In this quiet moment, Vittorio demands forever. He presents a picture of raw vulnerability, asking her to step into his shadows permanently. Luca does not even blink. She says yes. She signs away her old life, her freedom, and her very name. Watch the subtle shift in Vittorio's expression. The relief in his eyes is not the joy of a traditional groom. It is the cold, calculated satisfaction of a predator hearing the final click of the steel cage door locking shut. It reminds us to be careful of promises made in the wake of deep trauma. Sometimes a passionate vow to never let you go is just a beautifully packaged prison sentence. The camera pulls wide as the iron gates of the estate swing open. Notice how Vittorio changes the script. This heavily armed fortress is suddenly rebranded as their sanctuary. By telling her his empire is hers, he is not making her an equal partner. He is making her an accomplice. Luca smiles, gripping his hand as they walk past men armed with rifles. Inside, the claustrophobia is visual. high stone walls, cameras, and thick steel doors. When she questions the sheer number of guards, Vittorio pulls her close. He reminds her, with a chillingly soft tone, that this paranoia is purely for her safety. Life shows us time and time again that when someone insists on isolating you for your own protection, they are usually just protecting their absolute power over you. The tension in the grand foyer is thick enough to choke on. Vittorio stands there, calm as still water, casually threatening to wipe an entire bloodline in off the earth if they touch his girl. It is a chilling display of his dark nature. He tries to send Luca upstairs, attempting to shove his prize bird back into her cage before the wolves arrive. But watch Luca's face. Her chin lifts. She refuses to hide. She adopts his cold vocabulary, insisting she belongs in the room where the blood is traded. She throws away the damsel act completely, demanding a front row seat to his brutal world. We all reach a point of no return. Once you stop fighting the darkness and start asking for a seat at its table, the descent is no longer a tragedy forced upon you. It becomes your own conscious choice. Vittorio finally agrees, but look at how he frames the rules. Stay behind me. Do not speak. Leave when I tell you to. Every word is designed to shrink her down and remind her who is God in this house. The heavy oak doors swing open, and the temperature in the room instantly drops. Antonio walks in, radiating the kind of dead-eyed malice that makes the skin crawl. He zeroes in on Luca immediately, his gaze sliding over her like dirty water. He calls her a pet, a precise, calculated strike at Vittorio's fragile ego. Antonio smiles, flashing teeth like a shark smelling blood in the water. It is a terrifying dance of power. The lesson here is brutal but necessary. In rooms filled with ruthless people, your softer spots will never be respected. They will only be used as active targets. Stick with me here, because this is where the tragedy hits its absolute peak. Antonio laughs, claiming that love makes a man weak and soft. The lighting catches the pure, unhinged fury burning in Vittorio's eyes. He does not step forward to defend Luca as an equal partner. He defends her as his exclusive, untouchable property. His voice drops to a lethal whisper as he tells Antonio that love did not make him soft. It made him incredibly dangerous, because now he finally has a reason to burn the entire world to ash. It is the ultimate terrifying truth about this kind of obsessive devotion. A broken man does not use love to heal his wounds or become a better person. He weaponizes it. He uses it as the perfect excuse to justify destroying everything and everyone that stands in his way. The camera pushes slowly into the cold shadows of the warehouse. Cole stares down the rival boss, his face a total blank. We are looking at the hollow gaze of a man consumed by power. Across the table, Antonio smirks. He agrees to spare the trembling girl, Grace, but demands the South Docks in exchange. They barter over a human life, settling on a split. Cole agrees instantly. When Antonio mocks him, Cole pulls Grace so hard against his ribs that she gasps. He vows that a single scratch on her means war. To an untrained eye, this looks like sweeping romance, but the dark look in his eyes tells the real story. He is not saving her from danger. He is fastening a collar around her neck. The lesson here is simple. True safety is never found in the hands of a man who threatens the world just to own you. Antonio turns on his heel and walks out, the heavy metal door echoing as it shuts. In that suffocating quiet, the poison begins to take hold. Grace lets out a shaky breath, completely misreading the room. She actually believes the danger has passed. Cole drags her against his chest, swallowing her small frame in the dark fabric of his suit. She asks why he would give away half a city just for her. His voice is a rough hum as he tells her he would burn his empire to Ash to keep her. He openly admits his dark obsession. Stick with me here, because you and I are watching the exact second the trap springs shut. By confessing his worst traits, he tricks her into thinking he is vulnerable. The life lesson is clear. Manipulators often show you their teeth, so you mistake the wolf for a protective shield. Grace looks into those cold eyes and laughs nervously, whispering that she is not exactly normal either. The tragedy deepens later that evening under the warm lights of the dining room. Cole sits surrounded by his most violent men. Without warning, he takes Grace by the hand. He announces that she is no longer just a girl who works for them. When Grace leans in to ask what is happening, Cole turns his terrifying focus entirely on her. He runs his thumb slowly over her knuckles. He tells her, loud enough for every killer to hear, that she belongs to him now. He promises a ring the second she stops fighting it. It is absolute ownership disguised as romance. The life lesson here is one we should all remember. Grand public gestures are often just a clever way to lock you in a cage while everyone else claps. The air leaves her lungs. Later, bathed in the pale moonlight spilling through the bedroom windows, Grace tries to make sense of it all. She rests her cheek against his chest and whispers that this is pure madness. Just 3 months ago, she was pouring coffee. Now, she asks if she is a criminal's girlfriend. His arms tighten around her like iron chains. He tells her she is his permanent partner, never a girlfriend, because girlfriends can walk away, he reminds her. His life bleeds danger every single day. Let us pause and look at this together. Instead of running for the door, she tilts her head up and kisses him. The lesson here is brutal but deeply human. Sometimes, a lost soul will completely surrender their free will just to feel like they finally belong to someone. The shadows stretch stressed across the walls as Cole leans down. He warns her that once she crosses this line, there is no going back. In his world, men do not break up. They only do forever. Grace stares up into the dark, consumed by him, and breathes out that she wants forever. He orders her to say it again, forcing her to seal her own fate. He kisses her, murmuring that he loves her. She whispers it back, telling him she loves him even when his protection feels like a cage. Cole flashes a dangerous smile, admitting his dark control is who he really is. 2 quiet weeks slide by in this beautiful prison. The life lesson here is simple. Ignoring giant red flags only helps build your own trap. Then, the tragedy peaks. Grace wakes up to the cold weight of metal on her left hand. It is a blinding diamond ring. She spins around to find Cole leaning in the doorway. When she asks how it got there, he calmly replies, he slid it onto her finger while she slept. We really need to break this down. He dresses up an invasion of her boundaries as an act of romance. He steps into her space and tells her to marry him. She points out he already made the choice, but he demands to hear her surrender. Tears spill over her eyelashes. She calls him a lunatic, but the word yes falls from her lips right after. A true life lesson is that a boundary violation disguised as a shiny gift is still a violation. She crashes into his chest, joking that he could ask next time. His laugh is a deep rumble. He promises there will never be a next time. Her old life has shut forever. She surrenders to his forever. As their lips meet, Grace convinces herself that sleeping next to a killer is better than the quiet life she once planned. 6 months later, we arrive at a heavily guarded wedding filled with syndicate muscle. Grace stands in a white gown, looking at a man who represents both her ruin and her salvation. In the bridal suite, Bianca straightens her veil. When asked how she feels, Grace shivers and confesses she is terrified. Bianca smiles, insisting that fear just means the love is profound. She claims Grace has softened the boss's violent heart. It is the saddest lie ever told. A vital life lesson is that you cannot cure a man's deep psychological rot simply by loving him enough. That is a tragic delusion maintained by the very people who enable the monster. Bianca whispers that Grace is the only beacon of light in Cole's dark existence. She tells the bride that he will rip the world apart to keep her safe. This frames Grace not as an equal partner, but as a prize trophy. At the altar, sunlight catches the gold as Cole slides the band onto her finger. He puts on a breathtaking performance. His voice actually cracks. He confesses he does not know how to feel normal emotions, but she makes him want to be a better man. He swears his life to protecting her. Grace weeps, telling him he is already worthy of her heart. But here is a vital life lesson we all must learn. Real safety is never found in the arms of the predator who built your cage. You cannot be protected from danger by the man who actively creates the violent world around you. Grace stares up at him, swearing he is everything she never knew she needed. Cole echoes her words, locking the emotional loop shut. They kiss to the applause of violent men. As the sun sets, the reception spills into the gardens. Notice his body language here. He refuses to let go of her hand for even a single second. When Grace teases that he is being clingy, he drops his voice. He reminds her she is his wife now, which means he dictates exactly where she stands. He pulls her flush against his chest to dance, completely isolating her from the crowd. He murmurs against her hair, asking if she is happy. She sighs, saying she is deliriously happy. A simple life lesson is to always notice when someone intentionally isolates you. Given her mental capture, delirious is the most honest word she could use. Cole traces her jawline, joking with a dark smile that he will keep her happy for the next 80 years. It sounds like romance, but it is a lifelong sentence. As the guests fade into the night, he springs his next move. He announces a honeymoon on a private island cut off from the world. He states flatly that he wants her completely to himself. When Grace asks about safety, he mentions the mercenary army he hired to lock down the perimeter. He paints it as a peaceful utopia, far from his bloody lifestyle. She whispers that it sounds perfect. You and I must look past the illusion here and see the truth. A clear life lesson is that forced isolation is never a real vacation. A remote island surrounded by armed men is not a romantic getaway. It is simply a beautifully decorated, maximum security prison. He guides her to the car, calling her Mrs. Viscari for the first time. She shivers with delight, her original identity wiped clean. As the sedan pulls away from the gates, she reflects on the past. 6 months ago, she was dragged up this driveway, terrified for her life. Tonight, she believes this nightmare is a dream come true. Her brain has rewritten her survival instinct into profound gratitude. Leaning back, she laughs softly, telling him she accidentally fell in love with the most dangerous man in Chicago. They share a warm smile, treating her capture like a charming mistake. Then, the warmth vanishes. Cole's eyes as he shifts right back to strict dominance. He issues a possessive warning about her clothes. The life lesson here is simple. Your true identity should never be erased just to make someone else feel powerful. The streetlights flicker as he warns her he will not be held responsible for his actions if she tempts him. They murmur quiet promises, locking the cycle of submission into place. As they speed away, Grace looks out the window, lost in her altered reality. She tells herself that some rules are meant to be broken, especially those about falling for a ruthless employer. She closes her eyes, convinced she has won a dark fairy tale. But from where I sit, the final diagnosis is absolutely devastating. A megalomaniac has dismantled a woman's mind, replacing her free will with a trauma bond. The true life lesson here is carved in stone. When you fall in love with the monster holding the key to your cage, you have not tamed a beast. You have simply been trained to love the iron bars.